My dearest Bramble, how I've missed your touch. It is with a heart burdened by sorrow and unease that I write to you. The war has taken a grim and unexpected turn, and the horrors we now face are beyond anything I could have ever imagined. Our own magic, once our greatest strength, being turned against us with devastating effect. The knights have somehow discovered the secrets of our spells, secrets we believed impenetrable, closely guarded for generations. The other night, as we fought to defend Willow's Edge, I witnessed something that haunts my dreams and shatters any peace I once had. 2 of our brothers, Birch and Moss, fell victim to a vile incantation. Before my very eyes, their forms twisted and shrank, transformed into the most delectable rhubarb pies. The scent of freshly baked pastry filled with the air, an uncontrollable frenzy that seized upon me and the rest of my accompaniment. A lust that all gnomes feel when confronted with rhubarb pie, the most delicious and alluring of all pies. I'm ashamed to admit that the sight and scent drove me to madness. We who were fighting to protect our homeland were reduced to ravenous creatures consumed by the very magic meant to empower us. I can no longer sleep peacefully for the memory of Birch and Moss's pies. Delicious, irresistible pies plagues me. It is a torment that I cannot escape, a reminder of how vulnerable we have become. How could the knights have discovered the counters to our magic? How could they know the depths of our love for rhubarb pie? There's only one explanation that comes to mind. One that chills me to the bone. There must be a traitor among us. Someone within our ranks must have betrayed our most guarded secrets, revealing our vulnerabilities to the enemy. The thought of such treachery is almost too much to bear, yet it is the only way to explain the knight's sudden and uncanny knowledge. We must root out this traitor, whoever they may be. Until then, I will continue to fight through the fear and uncertainty that grow in my spirit. I miss you more than words can say, Bramble. Your warmth and your love are my only solace in these dark times. The thought of returning to you, of finding peace in your arms once more, is what keeps me going. Pray for us, my love. Pray that we find the strength to overcome these new challenges, and that the bonds of our brotherhood remain unbroken. And know that no matter the darkness we face, my heart belongs to you, now and always. Yours eternally, Thistle.
Welcome back to Historical Quarrels. This is Tyler, your host. That's right, we're continuing with more Gnome versus Knight lores today. And today will be the final episode of that for a long time. Unless, I don't know, people ask for it later. Or I just get bored again and I want to do this. That's really it. So, prep yourself. Prepare for more of this. I don't know. Listen to the letters. Some of the insanity that I wrote, I feel like is hilarious. So if you're here for the comedy or just like a weird interpretation of the Gnome versus Knights lore, then stick around for that because it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, that's it. Let's go ahead and get into it.
You are listening to Historical Quarrels.
The arrival of reinforcements on March 1st, 1584. Marked a critical turning point in the Gnome-Knight War. After weeks of grueling battles and devastating ambushes, the Belleroguard Knights of Marwood and their allies found renewed hope as fresh troops from the allied kingdoms of Theloria, Laria, and Verdantia marched into their camp. These reinforcements brought not only additional manpower, but also crucial supplies, advanced weaponry, and specialized units that would be instrumental in countering the Gnome threat. As the first rays of dawn illuminated the war-torn landscape, the knights stood at attention, watching the horizon with a mixture of anticipation and relief. The sight of approaching banners, Theloria's golden eagle, Alaria's silver star, and Verdantia's green lion, filled the hearts of the weary soldiers with a renewed sense of purpose. Trumpets blared and drums beat a steady rhythm as the reinforcements, 1,000 strong, marched into the camp. Leading the Thalorian contingent was General Alaric, a seasoned warrior known for his strategic brilliance and unyielding resolve. He brought with him a formidable cavalry, a force, and elite archers, their skill with the longbow legendary across the land. Duchess Alara herself led the Alarian troops, her presence a beacon of hope and strength. Her battle mages, clad in the robes that shimmered with arcane energy, were a welcome sight, their knowledge of defensive and offensive spells crucial to countering Gnome magic. Prince Hector commanded the Verdantian forces, his rangers and naval infantry adding a versatile edge to the allied army. As the commanders of the allied forces gathered in the command tent, Sir Joffrey briefed them on the current situation and the challenges that they faced. The arrival of reinforcements allowed for a more comprehensive review of their strategy. The Council of War convened once more, with new voices and fresh perspectives contributing to the discussion. The focus was on leveraging the strengths of each contingent to develop a multifaceted approach that would turn the tide of war. General Alaric proposed a series of coordinated offensives aimed at disrupting the Gnome supply lines and securing the strategic points within the Willow Forest. Duchess Alara suggested deploying her battle mages in defensive positions to create magical barriers that could protect the knights from the Gnome spells and traps, on top of the shields that they had created. Prince Hector's rangers were tasked with reconnaissance missions, their expertise in woodland warfare invaluable for navigating the enchanted forest and identifying Gnome positions. They also brought with them advanced weaponry and siege equipment. The Loria's engineers had developed powerful ballistae capable of launching enchanted bolts that could pierce through magical barriers. Larian alchemists provided potions and elixirs to enhance the knight's endurance and resistance to enchantments, and Verdantian blacksmiths introduced a new type of lightweight, flexible armor designed to provide maximum protection while allowing for greater mobility in the dense forest terrain. The morale boost provided by the reinforcements was palpable. The knights, who had been fighting a relentless and grueling war, found new strength in the solidarity and support of their allies. Training sessions and joint exercises were conducted to ensure seamless coordination between different units. Bonds were forged between soldiers of different kingdoms, united by a common goal and a shared determination to defeat the Gnome menace. As night fell, the camp buzzed with activity and a renewed sense of hope. The combined might of Marwood, Thaloria, and Alaria, and Verdantia was now poised to take the fight to the Gnomes with a ferocity and unity that had been previously unattainable. And so, on March 7th, 1584, the Battle of Misty Fen unfolded as one of the most surreal and challenging encounters in the Gnome Night War. The Knights of the Anti-Gnome Alliance, emboldened by recent reinforcements, advanced into the mist-laden wetlands known as Misty Fen, unaware that the Gnomes had prepared a formidable defense bolstered by powerful druids who wielded nature magic with devastating effect. The Knights, led by Sir Joffrey, moved cautiously through the fog-shrouded landscape. The thick mist clung to the ground, obscuring their vision and dampening sounds. As they advanced, the fog seemed to deepen, becoming almost tangible. This eerie atmosphere was the result of Gnome magic designed to disorient and divide the invading forces. Unbeknownst to the Knights, the Gnomes had enlisted the aid of druids, ancient practitioners of nature magic who held deep ties to the forest and its spirits. These druids, masters of illusion and elemental manipulation, were a formidable addition to the Gnome defenses. Their magic intertwined with the natural mist, creating phantasms and illusions that bewildered the knights. As the knights pressed forward, the fog thickened and the sounds of battle echoed from all directions. Phantom armies seemed to rise from the mist, and the knights found themselves striking at shadows and mirages. The gnomes and druids used these illusions to sow chaos and confusion, leading the knights into traps and ambushes. The once disciplined ranks of the Alliance began to splinter as units became isolated and disoriented. Sir Roland who had recently taken command of a vanguard unit, described the scene in his journal.
The fog was a living entity, twisting and turning our senses. We struck at shadows, phantasms, and laughed as our souls passed through them. The cries of our comrades seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It was as if the very land had turned against us, and the gnomes were its vengeful spirits.
The druid's magic not only created illusions, but also manipulated the environment. Trees seemed to move and shift, paths disappeared, and the ground itself became treacherous. The knights found themselves mired in bogs that had appeared out of nowhere, their movements hindered by grasping roots and vines. The gnomes, small and nimble, navigated the transformed landscape with ease, launching hit-and-run attacks that further demoralized the knights. In the midst of this chaos, Sir Joffrey rallied his troops, using the anti-magic shields to dispel some of the illusions and restore semblance of order. He ordered his men to form defensive circles, protecting each other from the gnomes' relentless assaults. The battle mages of Alaria worked tirelessly to counteract the druid's spells, creating pockets of clarity within the fog where knights could regroup. Despite these efforts, the battle was a grueling test of endurance and resolve. The knights struggled to maintain cohesion, their lines breaking and reforming as they fought through the illusions and natural hazards. The gnomes and druids, relentless and cunning, exploited every weakness, their knowledge of the terrain, giving them a significant advantage. As the day wore on, the tide began to turn. Prince Hector's rangers, having taken up to the trees to gain a vantage point, identified key druid positions and directed concentrated attacks against them. With the druids distracted and their spells faltering, the knights seized the opportunity to push forward. The gnomes, though still formidable, began to fall back under the renewed assault. By nightfall, the fog began to lift, and the knights finally saw the extent of the battlefield. The gnomes and druids, recognizing the shifting momentum, retreated into the depths of the forest, leaving the knights to claim a hard-won and Pyrrhic victory. The Battle of Misty Fen had inflicted heavy casualties on both sides and tested the resolve of the allied forces to their limits. The knights, though battered and weary, had proven their resilience. The battle underscored the importance of adapting to the gnomes' unconventional tactics and the necessity of unity and discipline in the face of disorienting magic. Even with the extra equipment and with the spells and the battle mages of Alaria, the knights still had a lot to overcome and a lot more strategy and cunning that they needed to employ if they had any hope of surviving further battles against a druid and gnome alliance. And so on March 15th, 1584, the Knights of the Anti-Gnome Alliance launched a bold and meticulously coordinated counterattack, aiming to reclaim lost territory and regain the momentum in the war against the Gnome Confederation. This offensive, known as the Great Counterattack, was a decisive and strategic operation that showcased the combined might and ingenuity of the Allied forces. The preparation for the Great Counterattack began immediately after the Battle of Misty Fen. The commanders of the Allied forces, King Aldric of Marwood, General Alaric of Thaloria, Duchess Alara of Alaria, and Prince Hector of Verdantia, convened to devise a plan that would exploit the weaknesses they had observed in the gnome defenses. They knew that surprise and coordination would be key to overcoming the gnomes' guerrilla tactics and magical fortifications. The strategy involved a multi-pronged assault aimed at striking several key gnome positions simultaneously. This would prevent the gnomes from concentrating their forces in one area and would spread their defenses thin. The knights would advance from three directions. The main force, led by Sir Joffrey, would march directly into the heart of the contested territories, while flanking units under Sir Roland and Prince Hector's rangers would attack from the sides, disrupting supply lines and communication. At dawn, the Allied forces mobilized, their movements synchronized with precision. The air was filled with the sounds of marching boots and clinking armor as the knights moved into positions. Sir Joffrey's main force, bolstered by Thalorian cavalry and Alarian battle mages, advanced with a determination born from weeks of hardship and resolve. The anti-magic shields, a crucial component of their strategy, were prominently displayed, ready to counter any gnome spells. As the knights approached with the first gnome outpost, they were met with fierce resistance. The gnomes, aware of the impending attack, had fortified their positions with traps and enchantments. However, the knights pressed on, using their shields to deflect magical attacks and their superior numbers to overwhelm the gnome defenders. The battle mages worked tirelessly to neutralize enchantments, clearing a path for the infantry to advance. Sir Roland's flanking unit encountered heavy resistance as well, but the rangers' expertise in woodland warfare allowed them to navigate through the forest with agility and precision. They targeted gnome archers and spellcasters, creating chaos and preventing the gnomes from mounting a coordinated defense. Prince Hector's rangers, meanwhile, executed daring raids on gnome supply lines, capturing valuable resources and disrupting the enemy logistics. The turning point came when Sir Joffrey's force breached the Gnome Central stronghold, a heavily fortified position known as Thorn Keep. The knights fought with unmatched ferocity, pushing through the wave after wave of gnome defenders. The anti-magic shields proved invaluable, allowing them to withstand powerful spells that would have otherwise decimated their ranks. In the heat of battle, Sir Joffrey personally led the charge, his valor inspiring those around him to press on despite the odds. By mid-afternoon, the knights had reclaimed Thorn Keep, a significant victory that marked the beginning of the end for the gnomes' control over the region. With the stronghold secured, the allied forces quickly moved to consolidate their gains, fortifying their positions and preparing for potential counterattacks. The gnomes, now on the defensive, retreated deeper into the forest, their morale shaken by the swift and coordinated assault. The great counterattack was a resounding success, not only reclaiming lost territory, but also demonstrating the effectiveness of the Allied forces when united under a common cause. The victory at Thornkeep was celebrated throughout the camp, with soldiers and commanders alike recognizing the significance of their achievement. The knights had shown that they could adapt and overcome the gnomes' unconventional tactics, and this newfound confidence would carry them forward into the battles to come.
My dearest Marjorie, the events of the past weeks have led me down a path darker than I ever thought I could walk. I feel compelled to confess the actions I have taken, driven by a hatred and resolve I never knew I possessed. I know you will struggle to understand, but please know that everything I have done was for the hope of ending this war and bringing peace back to our lands. After capturing that first gnome, I was filled with a burning desire to make him pay for the horrors his kind had inflicted upon us. I took him to a secluded spot deep within our camp, where no prying eyes could witness what I was about to do. My initial attempts to extract information was met with defiance and silent contempt. I knew that if I were to break his spirit, I would need to escalate my methods. I began capturing other gnomes, ambushing them during skirmishes and raids. Each one I brought back to the same secluded spot, using them as tools to break the will of my initial prisoner. The gnomes have a magic so vile, and yet I turn their own spells against them. Heresy. I committed heresy. Slowly, I transformed them into potted plants. I let them live just long enough to feel the agony of their transformation, to beg for release from their torment. The sight of his kin suffering so horribly began to wear down my captive. Each time another gnome begged for the sweet release of death, I could see the cracks forming in his resolve. I prolonged their pain, forcing him to watch every moment. Their pleas for mercy echoing in the small chamber we occupied. His defiance slowly turned to desperation, and eventually he broke. His spirit shattered under the weight of the horrors I had orchestrated. In his broken state, he began to divulge the secrets of their defenses, the intricacies of their spells, and the locations of their hidden strongholds. The information he provided was invaluable. I conveyed every detail to our leaders, who used this newfound knowledge to plan the great counterattack. The victory at Thornkeep, the reclamation of our lands, and the blow to the gnome's morale, all of it was made possible by the secrets I extracted from that wretched creature. The success of our counterattack is a victory I am proud of. But the means by which we have achieved it have left me hollow. I have seen the light fade from the eyes of those I once thought of as cunning tricksters, and I have become something I never wished to be. I use their own magic to torment them. I committed unspeakable acts of heresy. There still the gnomes that I transformed. I left them in a state of perpetual agony. They're still plants, half plant, half gnome. I know you may never look at me the same way again, Marjorie. The man you fell in love with has been changed by this war, shaped by the necessity to do what must be done to protect our people. I only hope that one day when this war is over, I can find a way to atone for the darkness that has taken hold of me. Until then, I will continue to fight, driven by the hope of ending this conflict and returning to you. Please, keep me in your prayers, for I fear the man I am becoming. Know that despite everything, my love for you remains unchanged. Yours eternally, Sir Alaric of Marwood.
In the wake of their recent setbacks, the gnomes of the Gnome Confederation executed a cunning plan to regain the upper hand in their struggle against the Knights of the Anti-Gnome Alliance. On March 22nd of 1584, the gnomes, with the aid of their druid allies, enchanted the vast expanse of the Oakwood Forest, creating a deadly labyrinth designed to entrap and mislead the Knight forces. The Oakwood Forest, a dense and ancient woodland, had always been a place of mystery and wonder. Its towering trees and winding paths provided a natural defense for the gnomes, who knew every nook and cranny of the terrain. Under the guidance of their most powerful spellcasters and druids, the gnomes transformed the forest into a living trap, a place where reality itself could shift and deceive. The enchantment of the Oakwood Forest involved a complex web of illusions, magical traps, and living spells that responded to the presence of intruders. Paths that once led to clearings now twisted back upon themselves, while familiar landmarks vanished or moved, leading the knights deeper into the enchanted maze. The trees whispered with voices that mimicked friends and comrades, luring the knights into ambushes and pitfalls. As the Knights of the Alliance entered the Oakwood Forest, they quickly found themselves disoriented. Sir Joffrey, leading the vanguard, realized too late the extent of the gnomes' enchantments. The gnomes and their druid allies utilized the enchanted forest to launch a hit-and-run tactic. Striking from the shadows and then disappearing into the foliage, the knights, despite their bravery and resolve, were ill-equipped to deal with an environment that seemed alive and with malevolent intent. The anti-magic shields, while effective against direct spells, could do little to counter the pervasive enchantments woven into the fabric of the forest. Sir Roland, who had already been hardened by the war and his own dark actions, led a contingent of knights into the heart of the forest, hoping to find a way to break the enchantment. Despite their best efforts, the knights found themselves increasingly isolated and vulnerable. Groups became separated, and gnomes picked them off one by one, using illusions to turn the knights against each other, or lead them into deadly traps. The forest, once a place of natural beauty, had become a nightmarish battlefield, strewn about with corpses, where every shadow and whisper held a potential threat. In a desperate bid to counter the gnomes, Duchess Alara's battle mages worked tirelessly to unravel the magical web that ensnared them. Using their own spells, they sought to dispel the illusions and create safe paths through the forest. Their efforts provided some relief, but the gnomes' enchantments were deeply rooted and resistant to disruption. The enchantment of the Oakwood Forest was a grim reminder of the gnomes' ingenuity and the lengths they would go to protect their homeland. It showcased their ability to turn the very environment into a weapon, exploiting the knights' lack of familiarity with the terrain and their reliance on conventional tactics. The battle for Oakwood Forest was not just a physical struggle, but a psychological one, testing the knights' resolve and sanity. As the knights continued to fight their way through the enchanted forest, they knew that the war was far from over. The gnomes had shown that they could still surprise and outmaneuver their foes, and the Alliance would need to adapt and innovate to counter the ever-evolving threats that they faced. This was a testament to the gnomes' resilience and cunning, a challenge that the knights would need to overcome to achieve their ultimate victory. On April 1st, 1584, the Knights of the Anti-Gnome Alliance took a bold and unprecedented step to counter the gnome threat: the formation of the Magi Order. This elite group of powerful wizards was enlisted to neutralize the gnomes' potent magic and to tip the scales in favor of the Alliance. Despite the wizards' initial neutrality in the conflict, the knights and their leaders understood that the lure of knowledge and substantial coin could persuade some to join their cause as mercenaries. The decision to form the Magi Order came after a series of devastating encounters with gnome magic, most recently the enchanted nightmare of Oakwood Forest. The knights knew that to stand a chance against the gnomes' arcane prowess, they needed wizards who could match and surpass their enemies' magical capabilities. The Council of Allied Leaders, including King Eldric, General Alaric, Duchess Lara, and Prince Hector, convened to devise a plan to recruit these elusive spellcasters. Despite their initial stance on neutrality, many wizards harbored a deep desire for arcane knowledge and the resources to fuel their research. The knights leveraged this, offering generous payments, rare magical artifacts, and access to all the Jummerboy bussy that they could ever want. Also to ancient tomes and libraries in exchange for their allegiance. This approach proved effective, and several powerful wizards agreed to join the alliance, motivated by the promise of knowledge and wealth. And bussy. The Magi Order was formally established in a grand ceremony held in the fortified city of Iron Keep. The wizards, each a master of their respective schools of magic, swore oaths to aid the knights in their struggle against the gnomes. The formation of this order was not merely a strategic move, but also a symbol of unity and cooperation between martial and magical forces. Among the prominent wizards who joined the Magi Order were Archmage Thalor, who was a renowned sorcerer specializing in elemental magic, capable of summoning storms and earthquakes to devastate enemy forces. There was Mistress Ileana, an expert in illusion and mind magic, whose spells could confound and mislead even the most cunning of gnomes. Sage Arathorn, a wise and ancient mage with profound knowledge of defensive enchantments and wards, essential for protecting the knights from magical attacks. And finally, there is Enchanter Celine, a young but gifted enchanter with the ability to craft powerful magical items and weapons, enhancing the knights' combat capabilities. The first task of the Magi Order was to develop countermeasures against the gnomes' enchantments and to devise new strategies for the knights. They began by studying the magical traps and illusions used in the Oakwood Forest, seeking ways to neutralize these threats. Archmage Thalor and Mistress Ileana led expeditions into the forest, dispelling the enchantments and restoring order to the disoriented knights. Sir Alaric, whose own dark journey had shown him the importance of magic in this war, welcomed the formation of the Magi Order. He saw in them a means to not only defeat the gnomes, but also to perhaps redeem some of the darkness that had taken hold of him. The Magi Order quickly proved their worth. In subsequent battles, their spells countered gnome magic effectively, turning once deadly encounters into victories for the knights. Enchanter Celine's magical enchantments made the knights' armor and weapons more resilient and deadly, while Sage Arathorn's defensive wards protected the entire battalions from magical assaults. The gnomes, recognizing the new threat posed by the Magi Order, adapted their tactics. The war became a battle of wits and spells, with the Magi Order and the gnome spellcasters constantly seeking to outmaneuver each other. The formation of the Magi Order marked a new phase in the conflict, one where magic and might worked in tandem to bring the alliance closer to victory. And so on April 10th, we have the Battle of the Broken Bridge, which became a defining moment in the Gnome Night War. It would highlight the fierce determination and formidable capabilities of both sides. This battle, fought at a strategic crossing over the River Sable, resulted in a brutal stalemate with heavy losses on both sides. The Broken Bridge, once a vital trade route, had become a critical point of contention in the ongoing war. Control of this bridge would allow the knights of the anti-gnome alliance to push deeper into gnome territory and secure their supply lines. For the gnomes, holding the bridge meant preventing the knights' advance and maintaining their defensive perimeter. As dawn broke, the allied forces, led by Sir Joffrey and reinforced by the newly formed Magi Order, approached the broken bridge with a sense of urgency and resolve. Archmage Thalor and Mistress Ileana coordinated their spells to support the knights, while Sage Arathorn and Enchanter Celine prepared defensive wards and enchantments. The knights, armed with anti-magic shields and enchanted weapons, were ready for the fierce battle ahead. The gnomes, anticipating the knights' advance, had fortified their positions on the far side of the bridge. They had already placed powerful enchantments on the bridge itself, turning it into a deadly trap for any who dared cross. Their druids and spellcasters stood ready, prepared to unleash a torrent of magic upon the knights. The battle began with an intense exchange of spells and arrows, each side testing the other's defenses. Sir Alaric, driven by a newfound grim resolve, led the charge across the bridge. The knights moved forward under the protection of their anti-magic shields, but the gnomes' enchantments soon came into play. The bridge erupted in magical explosions, and the ground beneath the knights' feet shifted and cracked. Despite the chaos, Sir Alaric pressed on, his determination unyielding. In the midst of the battle, the Magi Order showcased their formidable prowess. Archmage Thalor summoned a massive storm, sending lightning bolts crashing down upon the gnomes' positions. Mistress Ileana's illusions created false knight formations, drawing the gnome fire and allowing the real knights to advance. Sage Arathorn's defensive orbs absorbed and redirected much of the gnomes' magical assaults, while Enchanter Celine's enchantments made the knights' weapons strike true against gnome defenses. However, the gnomes were equally determined and resourceful. Their druids called upon the power of the forest, causing roots and vines to ensnare the knights and disrupt their formations. Gnome spellcasters unleashed waves of fire and ice, countering the knights' advances and inflicting heavy casualties. This battle raged on for an entire day, and neither side was able to gain a decisive advantage. The turning point came when the bridge itself began to collapse under the strain of the intense fighting. Sections of the bridge crumbled into the river below, turning the crossing into a treacherous battlefield. Both sides struggled to maintain their footing and continue the fight. The knights, realizing the danger of being trapped on the collapsing bridge, attempted to pull back, but the gnomes pressed their advantage, seeking to drive them into the river. Despite this chaos, Sir Joffrey and Sir Alaric managed to organize a retreat, their forces falling back to the relative safety of the riverbank. The gnomes, though victorious and holding the bridge had suffered significant losses and could not pursue the retreating knights. The bridge, now shattered and broken, stood as a symbol of the fierce and costly stalemate. As night fell, both sides licked their wounds and assessed the heavy toll the battle had taken. The knights had been unable to secure the crossing, but the gnomes had paid a high price for their defense. The Battle of the Broken Bridge demonstrated the brutal reality of the war, where victories were hard fought and often Pyrrhic. In his journal, Sir Alaric would reflect on the battle.
The broken bridge stands as a testament to our struggle. We fought with all our might, and yet the gnomes matched us blow for blow. This war has no easy victories, only the relentless pursuit of an end to the suffering. We must remain vigilant and steadfast, for the path to peace is fraught with trials that test the very core of our being.
The Battle of the Broken Bridge left both sides with much to consider. The knights and their allies knew they needed to adapt their strategies and find new ways to counter gnomes' magic and guerrilla tactics. The gnomes, aware of the knights' growing capabilities, prepared for the next phase of the conflict with renewed determination. This war was far from over, and each battle brought them closer to an uncertain and hard-won peace. And here we have a letter from Brambletooth to Thistle.
My dearest Thistle, I write to you with a heart weighed down by sorrow and disillusionment. The Battle of the Broken Bridge has left scars on my spirit that I fear will never heal. The futility of this war, the endless cycles of violence and death, has become all too clear to me. I wish more than anything that the initial attempts at brokering peace had succeeded. Perhaps then we would not be mired in this senseless conflict that has cost us so dearly. When the war began, I believed in our cause. I thought I understood what we were fighting for. But now, I can scarcely remember the ideals that once fueled my determination. The horrors I have witnessed, the lives lost, and the innocence shattered has left me questioning everything. I do not know if I will ever return to the joyous schoolteacher I once was in our beloved town of Whispering Hollow. I reminisce often about those days, Thistle, when the greatest challenge I faced was teaching our young ones the intricacies of reading and arithmetic. How I loved the laughter and curiosity of the children, their eyes bright with the promise of a future full of wonder. I remember Tinker, one of my first students, a boy so full of life and potential. He was just old enough to enlist when the war came to our doorstep. His spirit was unbreakable, or so I thought. During the battle, I watched in helpless horror as Tinker, that bright-eyed boy I once taught, was caught in the crossfire. The enemy's vile magic transformed him into a rhubarb pie. And in the chaos, our own comrades, driven by the frenzied lust we all share for rhubarb pie, consumed him. To see one of our own, someone I had nurtured and guided, reduced to such a fate, broke something deep within me. Despite the darkness that now clouds my heart, my will to protect Whispering Hollow and to avenge Tinker's senseless death is unyielding. I fight not just for survival, but to ensure that our home, our way of life, is not erased by this unending war. Each day I strive to find a way to honor his memory, to ensure that his sacrifice was not in vain. I cling to the hope that even in this madness, we can find a path to peace. The burden of war has changed me, Thistle. I do not know if I will ever be able to return to the simple joys of teaching, to the life we once knew. But I know that I must continue to fight, not out of hatred or vengeance, but out of love for our people and for the hope of a future free from the suffering, Pray for me, my love, as I pray for you. Hold on to the light and remember the better days, for they are the beacon that guides us through this darkness. May we one day find peace and return to Whispering Hollow, to rebuild and heal from the wounds this war has inflicted upon us all. Yours, eternally, Brambletooth.
The war between the Knights of the Anti-Gnome Alliance and Gnome Confederation had already seen countless acts of bravery and moments of heartbreak. And on April 18th, 1584, one such tragic event unfolded as the Knights attempted to rescue their comrade, Sir Alistair, from the cruel grip of gnome magic. The effort, marked by hope and desperation, ended in sorrow. Sir Alistair, a noble and valiant knight, had fallen victim to a particularly vile gnome spell during the chaos of the Battle of the Broken Bridge. He had been transformed into a grotesque, sentient statue, a mockery of his former self. Frozen in a state of perpetual agony, his comrades, unwilling to abandon him to such a fate, devised a plan to reverse the enchantment and to restore their beloved brother in arms. The knights, led by Sir Geoffrey and accompanied by several members of the Magi Order, including Archmage Thalor and Sage Arathorn, brought Sir Alistair's statue to a secluded glade where they believed they could safely perform the ritual. The air was thick with anticipation and the weight of what they were about to attempt. Failure was not an option that they wished to consider, yet the risks were high and the complexity of the gnomish curse was daunting. Archmage Thalor began the incantation, drawing upon his deep well of elemental magic to unravel the spell, and Sage Arathorn, with his profound knowledge of defense wards and counter curses, assisted in stabilizing the magic around Sir Alistair, hoping to provide a shield against any backlash. The knights watched in tense silence, their hearts filled with a mixture of hope and dread. But as the ritual progressed, it became clear that the gnomish magic was far more intricate and insidious than they had anticipated. The statue that was once Sir Alistair began to glow and tremble, signs that the spell was being challenged. But then the glow turned dark, and a terrible, otherworldly wail filled the glade. The ground shook, and a surge of chaotic energy erupted from the statue, throwing the knights and mages backward. Sir Geoffrey, picking himself up from the ground, saw the horror before him. The statue had shattered into countless pieces. And where once there was a glimmer of hope, now there was only devastation. Sir Alistair's remains lay scattered, the remnants of the spell's malevolent power still crackling in the air. And the realization hit them all at once. They had failed. They had not recognized that this was a trap set by the gnomes. The gnomes had deliberately planted the stone statues of their fallen comrades and the ones that they had captured around the battlefield to be picked up. And they planned on the knights to try and unseal them from their fate, to then use them as spell bombs. The scene was one of utter desolation. Sir Geoffrey knelt among the fragments of his fallen comrade, his face etched with grief and guilt. Many had believed that Sir Geoffrey and Sir Alistair had shared a kin and bond that had reached deeper than that of just friendship, but a brotherhood, perhaps even more. Archmage Thalor and Sage Arathorn, though seasoned in the ways of magic, were visibly shaken. They had underestimated the strength of the gnomish curse and paid a heavy price for it. Both of their right arms had been torn from their bodies. The knights, their spirits already battered by the relentless war, now bore an even greater burden. The tragic failure to rescue Sir Alistair left the knights and their allies more determined than ever to end the gnome menace, and the loss strengthened their resolve to find new ways to counter the gnome's magical prowess and protect their comrades, as well as emboldening the Magi Order to dive deeper into the cause, not needing as much coin and as much forbidden arcane knowledge as they did before. For they had seen through the wicked ways of the gnomes they had once believed to be whimsical, and now viewed them as monsters. And then on April 25th, there was a significant breakthrough that was achieved by capturing a gnome artificer. The capture occurred during a raid on a gnome outpost near the border of Enchanted Willow Forest. The knights, under Sir Alaric's command, launched a surprise attack at dawn, their strategy meticulously planned to avoid the deadly enchantments and traps that had previously cost them so dearly. The gnome outpost, though well defended, was caught off guard by the ferocity and precision of the knights' assault. Among the captured gnomes was a highly skilled artificer known as Grimbold. His reputation as a master of magical devices and traps was well known among the gnome ranks, recognizing the value of their captive. Sir Alaric immediately ordered Grimbold to be brought to a secure location for interrogation. The knights had learned from their earlier encounters that extracting information from the gnome prisoners was no simple task. Their resilience and loyalty to their kin were formidable. However, Sir Alaric's previous experience with a gnome POW had taught him the harsh tactics required to break their spirit. He knew that time was of the essence, and the information Grimbold held could save countless lives. In a secluded tent, away from prying eyes and ears, Sir Alaric began the interrogation. His methods, honed by necessity and hardened by the brutality of war, were both psychological and physical. He used a combination of threats, isolation, and the fear of witnessing the torture of fellow gnomes to wear down Grimbold's resistance. The interrogation was relentless. Sir Alaric employed the same dark spells the gnomes had used against his own men, transforming captured gnomes into potted plants and other grotesque forms, letting them linger in their suffering just long enough to break their will. Grimbold, witnessing the torment of his fellow gnomes, began to falter. The once stoic artificer saw the cruel reflection of his people's own tactics turned against them, and it wore him down. Days of this relentless pressure took their toll. Grimbold, exhausted and broken, finally began to divulge his secrets. He spoke of the enchantments laid upon the Willow Forest, the intricate traps and illusions designed to mislead and destroy the intruders. He detailed the gnomes' defensive strategies, their reliance on guerrilla tactics, and the magical devices that they used to fortify their positions. The information provided was a treasure trove for the knights. It allowed the Magi Order to develop counterspells and devices to neutralize gnome enchantments. The knights could now plan their campaigns with a deeper understanding of their enemy's tactics, anticipating traps and illusions that had previously been their undoing. The successful interrogation of Grimbold marked a turning point in the war. With their newfound insights, the knights and their allies prepared for the next phase of their campaign. It was only after the war that a dark journal was found where the full extent of Sir Alaric's methods would be understood, but never shared publicly until now.
Today, I reflect on the measures taken to break the will of Grimbold, the gnome artificer. It is with a strange detachment that I recount these events, as if I were merely an observer to my own actions, driven by a force beyond my control. When we captured Grimbold, I knew that mere threats or pain would not suffice to extract the valuable secrets he held. Gnome artificers are known for their resilience and cunning. Grimbold was no exception. To shatter his resolve, I sought out his family, who had been hiding in a nearby encampment. The discovery of his loved ones presented an opportunity to employ a level of cruelty that even I had not yet explored. I took his children, innocent and terrified, and subjected them to the same cruel magic the gnomes wielded so readily. Using their own spells, I transformed them into grotesque half-rhubarb pie amalgamations. Creatures caught between life and an abominable state of existence. Their eyes, still retaining the spark of life, looked upon their father with pleading desperation, their small voices crying out for his help. Grimbold's agony was palpable. His stoic facade crumbling as he watched the horror unfold. Yet the true breaking point came when I forced his wife, distraught and bewildered, to eat one of their own children, believing it to be a twisted means of saving them. The screams, the tears, the soul-wrenching cries of despair, they were like a symphony to my ears, a dark melody that stirred something long buried within me. I found a perverse sense of satisfaction in watching Grimbold's spirit shatter. It was the first real joy I'd felt in months. A grim pleasure that made me aware of just how far I had strayed from the knightly virtues I once held dear. The realization brought no guilt or shame, only a deeper understanding of the abyss into which I have descended. As I write this, I know my actions will damn me in the eyes of any who learn of them. Yet, I cannot deny the cold satisfaction of knowing that the information extracted from Grimbold has already turned the tide of this war. It is a cruel irony that in becoming the very monster I sought to destroy, I have achieved my greatest success. The man I once was is dead, replaced by a creature fueled by hatred and emptiness. I fear that even when this war ends, there will be no redemption for me. The darkness has taken root, and I am now lost within it. But for now, I will continue to play my part, for it is the only purpose I have left.
On May 2nd, 1584, a historic alliance was forged between the Knights of the Anti-Gnome Alliance and the reclusive woodland elves. The partnership brought new hope to the war-weary knights, granting them access to powerful nature magic and the unparalleled knowledge of the elves in navigating and utilizing the force to their advantage. And on May 6th of 1584, the gnomes, recognizing the increasing strength and capabilities of their enemies, would forge an alliance with the Troll Union, gaining access to powerful field soldiers, and enhancing their arsenal with enchanted weaponry and spell cannons. This alliance promised to make the Trolls, already fearsome combatants, even deadlier on the battlefield. The Troll Union was a very loosely organized but immensely powerful group of troll clans. They've been long known for their brute strength and resilience. Their imposing stature and natural combat prowess made them formidable foes. The gnomes, leveraging their expertise in enchantments and magical craftsmanship, proposed an alliance that would arm the trolls with advanced weaponry and armor, turning them into an even greater force to be reckoned with. The negotiation took place between the Troll Union in the subterranean halls of Gloomrock, the ancient stronghold of the Troll chieftains. Grimbold, the captured gnome artificer whose secrets had been forcibly extracted by the knights, had played a crucial role in designing the new enchanted gear for the trolls. Now, his knowledge was put to use in a way that the knights had not anticipated. The agreement was struck swiftly. The gnomes would provide the trolls with enchanted armor and weapons, including massive spell cannons capable of unleashing devastating magical attacks, and in return the trolls would lend their considerable might to the gnomish war effort, serving as frontline soldiers in key battles. And that's when we get to the Battle of Crystal Springs. Crystal Springs, a vital source of fresh water, strategically important location, was the chosen battleground. The gnomes, now supported by the Troll Union, had fortified the area, recognizing its importance. The allied forces, led by Sir Joffrey, and bolstered by the elven contingent under High Druidess Alandra, aimed to reclaim the Crystal Springs and deliver a significant blow to the Gnome-Troll alliance. As dawn broke over the serene landscape of the Crystal Springs, the Allied forces prepared for battle. The knights, wearing their newly enchanted armor and wearing weapons, strengthened by the elves' magic, stood ready. The woodland elves, with their deep connection to the natural world, had prepared the battlefield, infusing the very ground and water with protective and empowering spells. The battle commenced with a fierce initial assault by the trolls, their enchanted armor glinting in the morning light, and their spell cannons firing devastating blasts. The knights, however, were prepared. Under the guidance of Archmage Thalor, they raised magical barriers that absorbed and deflected the trolls' attacks. High Druidess Alandra summoned the power of the forest, causing the ground to erupt with roots and vines that entangled the trolls and slowed their advance. Sir Alaric, at the forefront of the battle, fought with a renewed sense of purpose. The memory of past defeats and the horrors of war fueled his determination. As the trolls pressed forward, he and his men stood their ground, their resolve bolstered by the presence of their elven allies. The elven archers, with their unmatched precision, targeted the gnome engineers and spellcasters, disrupting their control over the trolls' enchanted gear. A turning point came when High Druidess Alandra, standing atop a hill overlooking the springs, raised her staff and called upon the ancient spirits of the forest. A shimmering barrier of light enveloped the allied forces, protecting them from the worst of the trolls' attacks. Simultaneously, the waters of the Crystal Springs, infused with elven magic, erupted into torrents that swept through the gnome and troll ranks, scattering them and breaking their formations. Archmage Thalor seized the opportunity to unleash a devastating storm of lightning and fire upon the disoriented enemy. The combined forces of nature and arcane magic created a spectacle of destruction that overwhelmed the gnomes and trolls. Sir Joffrey led a charge, cutting through the enemy lines and driving them back in disarray. Despite the chaos, the trolls fought with a brutal tenacity, their strength and resilience making them formidable opponents. Sir Alaric himself, in a fierce duel with a massive troll chieftain, their clash shaking the very ground beneath them. With a final, desperate thrust, Sir Alaric managed to pierce the chieftain's enchanted armor, felling the beast and turning the tide in favor of the allied forces. By midday, the allied forces had secured Crystal Springs. The remaining gnome and troll forces, seeing their leaders defeated and their lines broken, retreated into the forest. The victory was decisive, and the cost high, but the reward immense. The control of the Crystal Springs not only provided a strategic advantage, but also boosted the morale of the knights and their elven allies. In the aftermath of the battle, Sir Joffrey and High Druidess Alandra surveyed the battlefield together. The alliance had proven its worth, and the combined strength of human valor and elven magic had secured a crucial victory. Sir Alaric, though weary and wounded, felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The horrors of war were far from over. But this victory was a beacon of hope in the darkness.